Okay, let's start recording. It started recording. Okay. Okay. Good day all and good day, Captain Rohit. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. How's everything at your end? Good.
Thank you.
Okay, Captain Rohit, yeah, the last session, what you had talked about was very interesting, which we termed it as the Black Hawk Down, the collision, mid-air collision between the Black Hawk and aviation aircraft was very interesting. And we got lots of heads up from a lot of our followers, and they have basically, encouraged us to keep on doing this. And as
Excellent.
what we had between two of us, both of us, we had assured and promised that, we'll try to basically harmonize or try to amalgamate this whole kind of thing between the maritime industry and the aviation. Because as it is, we have a common ground when we talk about IMSAR, International Aeronautical Maritime Search and Rescue System. So coming from there, plus lots of things we have common as far as the navigational aspects are concerned. So that's a very good idea, and with your availability and facilitation, this certainly is maybe gradually trying to make this program a bit success. So thanks again, Captain Rohit.
Thank you.
Captain
Thank you
Rohit,
very much.
today, as what we had spoken in the preamble, we will talk about the maritime, accident collision and the excerpts of it, which comes from the MAIB report, which is Maritime Accident and Information Bureau. The report, this particular report is an interim report. So still there are more outcomes to come, but idea is, from my perspective, I will try to, put in my feed, looking at the practical aspects as far as the safety of navigation is concerned. And once we can, basically conclude this talking about this particular report, you please feel free to ask so that, would be a kind of brainstorming session, would be a learning curve, not only from my point of view, but from our followers and, and your side across the fence from the aviation industry also, because learning is a curve and we are not
Yes, absolutely.
encyclopedia.
Idea is to learn from another field and correlate into our field as well and understand it from
Yes,
that aspect. So yes,
understand it. Yes, sir. Yes, please
if
go.
I ask some silly questions, please don't.
Oh, no, no, no. By all means, like I've asked so many silly questions which perhaps I was not aware of it, and you had filled me in. And that is how it is, yeah. That is how it
Absolutely,
is. That is
absolutely.
how it is. And that is where, we try to learn from each other and each other experience. And though I have already quit sailing for last 4 years, but you're still an active trainer and active pilot of aviation industry. So there are a lot of things I certainly would be
Yes.
uh, asking you to share with me, which certainly is a learning curve for me.
Yep.
So, Captain Rohit, I'm going to share this report. We'll talk about initially the excerpts of it, and then we'll talk
Uh-huh.
about the pictorial thing.
Sure.
Can you see my screen, Captain Rohit?
Yes, I do.
Now, the subject vessels which were involved, I'll just talk about from their particular point of view. The first vessel is Solong, which is a container vessel. The second vessel is Stena Immaculate, which is a tanker. And
Okay.
registry, flag of registry or the port of registry is one is Portugal, other is in USA where is not specified. And the year of build for the container vessel is year 2005, and year of build for tanker Immaculate, Stena Immaculate is 2017. And as we go down the rung, or the length overall, the total length of the vessel involved is so long. Let's say the length overall is 140.64 meters. That is of the container vessel,
Mhm.
and the what do you call the length overall for the tanker is 183.17 or 169, which is what we call is a mid-sized tanker. And then you have a lot of other thing, length between perpendicular register thing, which is not in this from this point of contention. Now, the voyage port of departure for the container ship was from Scotland, that is Dragonmouth, and the container ship was from Greece. And the port of arrival, that is subsequent prior to this mishap, was in Netherlands, and thereafter the tanker was in England, and it was international trade. And the date when this particular thing happened was on 10th of March 2025 at 0947. That is the Marine Casualty Information Report. And location incident coordinates have been given. That is, in the Sperm Head and Humber Estuary, England. It is where it happened. The place on board where the damage took place, the container vessel which collided with the tanker vessel on her port side, that is brought on, and the bow of the container vessel which collided with the tanker. So it is the port hull, and fatality injuries that is on container vessel was one. And so far, no casualties reported on
Just
the
one fatal.
tanker vessel.
No, not in the
Yeah, I'm sorry,
the
say again,
container.
please.
I think the
Okay.
container had vessel had one fatal.
Yeah, she had one fatality because there was somebody standing ahead on the bow, what I understand from the report. But the tanker vessel, the Stena Immaculate, was at anchor. So the ship operation, as stated earlier, container vessel Solong was on passage, or we call it underway, and the Stena Immaculate was at anchor. Now we talk about here a little bit things like background, and I'll just read the report. First the excerpts from this that on 27th February 2025. Okay, this is the past report. I will not go into that. Registered oil. This is oil chemical tanker. That is Stena Immaculate, which is in figure 4. Let me show to all our viewers and you the vessels. This one is Stena Immaculate on the left-hand side of the screen, and on the right-hand side of the screen is the container vessel Solong. So there was a collision between these two vessels, and I will just talk about their voyage thing. That is okay. Factual information: at Stena Immaculate approached the Humber estuary on 9th March 25, 2025. The officer of watch contacted the British ports, the ABP, that is the VTI's Vessel Traffic Services, Humber, and was advised to proceed to anchor at a position 5 nautical miles to north of Humber Light float and 2 nautical miles clear of the pipelines. At about 1830, Stena Immaculate Master maneuvered the vessel as directed to a position north of ABP Humber Light and area of responsibility where she anchored. Now, few things I would like to say, like, what happens that when we also go for the anchorage, we ask the VTIS or the port control for the anchor position. They delegate us the anchor position, and it is subjective that if the master or the captain of the ship finds that this particular position is not very let's say conceivable or very safe for the vessel, then he can always ask for a request for another position, or mainly sometimes VTIS or the vessel traffic information system, they say okay, they leave the ball in your court that okay, you anchor within this much periphery as long as you don't go beyond. And the other thing, they guide you, because what happens that in the deep ocean or in the sea or in the coastal water, territorial sea, you have a lot of pipelines. The submarine cables, late pipelines or submarine cables are passing by. So what happens that when you are dropping your hook or the anchor, you have to be from the prudence of safety of navigation, as far as that is concerned. You have to look after from the safety aspect that you should be well away from the submarine cables or the submarine laid pipeline, so that in case of any rough weather if encountered, your vessel, if she starts to drag, it should not damage any of those
pipes.
Yes, pipes or the submarine cables, whatever is the case may. So yes,
one question,
yes, please, please, please.
Once the ship is anchored, is the VTS also monitoring that ship position?
Oh yes, yes. Yes,
There could
yes,
be
yes.
other ships
They,
coming in through that
yes,
route.
yes, yes. They monitor, and once, let's say, if once we have dropped the hook or dropped the anchor, we also report coordinates to the VTIs, and then they affirm it yes. And many a times it happens that for some reason, if the vessel is not exercising due diligence, when they are monitoring you on their whole port radar, they also admonish you in case there is some change in your anchor position, or if in case you're tracking the anchor or any vessel which is coming in the close proximity of your vessel. So they do it, but then at end of the day, it is not their whole and sole responsibility. The whole and sole responsibility lies upon the master or the captain of the ship.
But they will be allocating that route to other ships as well, or similar. So
No, no.
is this
Yeah, please put in your question,
are
Captain
these
Rohit.
are
Sorry.
these coordinates transmitted to other close by ships?
You see, what happens that every port facility has a designated anchorage area. Normally, the designated anchorage area varies. Like some places it is general anchorage, some places it's immigration anchorage, some places it's a dangerous goods anchorage, some places it is designated only for the tankers
Yeah.
or the liquid cargo vessels or LPG carriers, which have a high risk. So it's a designated anchorage. Now the anchorage, some depends upon the area or the territorial waters where you're going, subject to the sea room they have. Some places it's very big, some places it's small. So when you're going to the anchorage, as I said earlier, that VTIs will give you a coordinate that okay, you can go to and drop the hook, in so and so coordinate, so and so position. But ultimately, it's a master's responsibility or the captain's responsibility to basically choose or pick his choose where he finds he's safe, convenient, and comfortable to drop the anchor, and for which nobody can push the master that okay, you must drop here, otherwise no.
Yeah. Okay.
Or if many a times it has happened that I'll share with my little experience is that if I find that anchorage designated to me by the VTIs or the authority is not safe enough, then I take my own call that okay, I will stop the ship. Of course, my engines are running on standby, and I will drift the vessel. But it is also a commercial thing that if suppose you are slotted to be at the anchorage and you do not have a berth or the port in the facility, the berth is available, then it may take few days. So the fuel consumption then increases when you're drifting the vessel. Okay, so ultimately, the master, the captain's, the ball is in his court what he wants, and safety, of course, from the safety aspects, safety is paramount.
Yeah.
So coming to next, by 2000 hours, 9th March 25, so long, that is the container vessel had departed Dragonmouth, Scotland, and disembarked the pilot and commenced a voyage to Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and Solong planned a passage, followed a route the route the vessel had used in past, and the master remained on watch until shortly 2300 hours, and then handed over the watch to the second mate or the second navigating officer, and he retired to the bed. So the idea is that something which has not yet been depicted in this particular report is that were the short of Manning as far as the navigation watchkeeping officers are concerned, because the next line subsequently states that shortly before midnight, Stena Immaculate, second officer, took over the anchor watch at the start of 12-hour duty period. Now, this was there. I'm talking about the short of manpower, which was, as it's been depicted here on Stena Immaculate, that the second mate was on 12-hour watch. Probably the chief officer might have been busy somewhere or whatever is not many things have been specified. At approximately 1:30 on 10th 0130 hours local time, 10th March 2025, Solong passed Longstone Lighthouse off the northeast coast of England, and altered course onto heading of approximately 150 degrees. Solong maintained the course except for a slight deviation at 0345. At 0700 hours, Solong's master returned to the bridge and took over the watch at the lone as a lone watchkeeper. So
Mhm.
we'll talk about it. Let me go through this, read the whole thing. The visibility in the area north of Humber Light uh, float was reported to be patchy and varying between 0.25 nautical miles to 2 nautical miles. Neither Solong nor Stena Immaculate had a dedicated lookout on the bridge. At 0947, Solong collided with the anchored vessel Stena Immaculate portside on the heading of 150 and a speed over ground of 16 knots, which has been depicted in the figure, which I'll show it later. The AB or the able seaman Mark Pamia, one of the Solong's crew, was reported to be at the forecastle area at the time of collision. So the one fatality which was there as what we had seen in the initial the first page or in the ships particular that Solong or the container vessel had one fatality. Why? Because the person or the able seaman was standby at the forecastle or foremost part of the bridge, because when the collision took place it was broad on or the port side of the Stena Immaculate tanker and bow of the Solong, the container vessel. Yes, Captain Rohit, you can ask and then we can proceed further. What you would like to ask?
Okay. So one, there was nobody manning the, or
I'm
at least,
sorry, your voice is not clear, Captain Rohit. Can you say again, please?
so what I understand is, both the ships, they were limited uh, number of crew available. Does it? Isn't that way?
Yes, when we have when we call about safe manning, we have a safe manning document or safe manning certificate which is designated to each vessel or which has been decided by the flag state. Flag state is basically the flag of the or the ensign flag the vessel is flying of whichever country they designate as per the size, as per the
Mhm.
trade of the vessel that what should be the safe manning required. In this case, in the Solon case, the master was there alone on the bridge, and in this case, so Immaculate, that is Stena Immaculate, also the duty officer was there on the bridge, and the other adversary was the visibility, which was gauged as per the report, was 0.25 nautical miles and varying to 2 nautical miles, which is actually not much. It is construed as
Of
kind of
course.
restricted visibility.
So two questions. Uh,
Yeah.
does the VTIS have some kind of radar which tells them positions on the radar? Does it show there's a ship which is anchored and then there's another ship which is moving? Does it show
Yes, yes, yes,
they
I
have?
agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Also, between these two ships, they would have something called as some anti-collision device instruments.
Yes. Okay. Now, first thing is as your first question that PTIs is monitoring. Yes, they do monitor. They call upon the vessel that's saying, okay, you are coming in the close proximity of an anchored vessel, or you're passing through the anchorage, designated anchorage. Because what happens, a vessel which is, traversing through the coastal passage, which is also known as innocent passage, as per the law of seas. Uh, no vessel is supposed to enter into an anchorage unless she is permitted to do so. Means you cannot trespass an anchorage on your passage. Let's say you're going from point A to point B, and in between you have altered your course, as you saw the report that the Solong was on a course of 150 and then 0345 she was adjusting her course, which I'll show you here on a bigger scale. 1 minute. You see here, this is where Solong had departed and she kept on doing adjusting her course alteration and she came pretty close to the coast over here. And
Mhm.
that's where this is the area where the collision took place, where the Solong was coming on a course of, let's say, southeasterly course of 150,
Correct.
and this Stena Immaculate was anchored over here. So this is the area where the collision took place.
Mhm.
So if you are coming even into the port facility of Humber, let's say, still you are supposed to stay well clear of all these areas where the designated anchorages are there, or some other activities going on in the coastal state. You have to keep well clear of it, and especially when you're traversing through the restricted visibility, there are, coal regs, collision regulations are there, which we have to comply with it. So in this particular case, as I can see this particular report, which of course is interim as we speak, not much information has been given.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any particular reason they would have uh, come so close to the coast, weather or any other?
You see, if the weather constraints are there, still, a thumb rule is that in case suppose a vessel which is inside, I'm just telling you the
Yes.
logical explanation on that. Uh, in case, let's say there's a vessel which is there in the port and a bad weather is expected, or forecast says that yes, it will be stormy weather. Uh, a good practice, or the practical, from the practical aspect of the a good seamanship, what 99.99 or almost 100% masters of the captain would do, they would rather prefer to go back to sea, go out into sea,
Okay. Okay.
because in port you are restricted to maneuver.
Right. Right.
So this again part, as Solong was trying to come close to course, probably her passage plan was not well implemented by the master.
Mhm.
One one particular thing what I can think about is that complacency, because this vessel has been on the same trading pattern for quite some time.
Oh, okay.
So that is where the complacency might have set in, which I can what I can see, reading between the lines in this particular report. Because the trading pattern of this Solong had been almost going to all these ports, because the container vessel has, a kind of it's a kind of like a shuttle service.
Right.
They know
Right.
that they have to go to this port, discharge so many containers, backload so many containers, then go
And
to
then
the
come back.
next port, next port, next port. So it's like a ferry kind of service.
So every few weeks, probably they must be traversing the same
Yes,
route.
yes, yes. So that probably the complacency might have come in, and then other thing which I fail to understand, when it has been shown as per this report that the visibility was 0.25 to 2 nautical miles, you
Mhm.
are going into a restricted visibility RV scenario.
With
First
16.
thing is, like, we have Colrec rule number 6, which talks about the safe speed.
Mhm.
Safe speed has to be, taken into account. But somewhere down the line, what I can see through that, yes, this so long being a container, they have maybe having a commercial pressure. So either the master
Mhm.
had succumbed under the commercial pressure that, okay, because if you reduce the speed, your ETA gets affected.
Right.
So that may have been one of the reasons why he was going at such a high speed. Though container ships do around 16, 20, 25 knots also, but the limitations are like, restricted speed and all that, restricted visibility, all that.
So
Yeah.
with your experience, Captain, what would be the speed that probably you'll be?
See, this safe speed, when we see that situation, like what sort
Mhm.
of scenario or situation are you in?
Mhm.
If you are in a, in a situation where you think you need to increase the speed, yes, because if you have external factors like wind, sea, current, which is affecting you, because lesser the speed, more
Mhm.
the external effect on you as far as the weather and the current and the sea and swell are concerned.
Right.
Okay. But if you have a clear sea passage and you are encountering restricted visibility, then it's a good idea, especially when the visibility is so bad. Of course, your last question was that don't we have a collision avoidance system? Yes, we have all of that. But the radars and all these equipment, they have limitations as well because of the spurious targets.
Okay.
So it may happen that a big vessel, of course, a big vessel with a metal ship will be painted quite handsomely on the ship, subject to the range of the radar you're using, and a smaller fishing vessel, which is of, let's say, wooden structure or superstructure, mainly is of wooden and partially steel, may not get picked up by the radar.
Right. Right.
So, taking those things into account, it is good to proceed at safe speed, and especially when you have a restricted visibility. And then there was no compliance found as far as the RV rules or rules of road or colbricks are concerned to put additional lookouts. Then we have signals or sound signals for the vessels, whether they were being used or not, to alert the vessels that this vessel is in vicinity, which is mandatory for all the vessels traversing through the patch of restricted visibility.
Quite a few.
Yeah,
So what could be the reason? A tanker like this, it's a huge tank. It probably would have painted on their anti-pollution laws.
it would certainly have. It certainly would have. I'm not denying it. But yes, maybe the complacency, maybe the duty officer did not see. Maybe he was engrossed in something else. Because today, what is happening, even I think you also must have been facing similar kind of situation that, with all the types of electronic aids to navigation, what we have,
Right.
there has been somewhere down the line a very much over reliance upon these navigational equipment, where, like what we were taught, I think I'd shared in one of the earlier sessions with you as
Yes.
well,
Yes.
that, we were taught that eyes are your best radar and brain is your best computer. That is in case you are not in a restricted visibility. Many times I've come across that, when even the DD officer can see the ship visually in front of his eyes and knows what action to be taken, but he is so homed on to the radars and ECDIS, that is the electronic charts, that he doesn't even bother to see or look at the horizon as to what's been happening.
But these instruments, do they give some kind of warning, some alert? It's like, is it there?
Yes, yes. The ARPA gives you the alerts and warnings
Uh-huh.
that it depends, like, the kind of guard range. You have a guard range, you can put a guard zone that, okay, if within 6 nautical miles I get a target which is dangerous to me,
Mhm.
which may be coming on a collision course, the radar or ARPA may be warning.
Mhm.
But in this particular case, when they are so close that the container vessel is at 16 knots on a course of 150, and she has got a container vessel, because the tanker Stena Immaculate, because the vessel at anchor can't do much.
Of
She
course.
doesn't have enough time to pick up her anchor and run
They
away.
can't.
It's too
Yes,
too
that's
less
it.
time.
Can't do anything. Yes.
The vessel which is at anchor, she's partially at safe haven. Therefore, she cannot take much action to
Action.
avoid this kind of collision. The
Right.
whole and soul thing lies on the
Responsibility.
Solong, but at the same time, as far as warning the container vessel by the tanker vessel, that is Stana Immaculate, which also I did not see in the report, because that means the duty officer on the bridge of Stena Immaculate also was not monitoring as far as the safety of navigation is concerned. Normally, what happens that if any vessel which comes, let's say if I put a barrier of in a restricted visibility, I'll put a barrier of 6 nautical miles on my radar. That if any vessel which is coming towards me within 6 nautical miles, I have enough time to warn him and call the master or inform the captain, and simultaneously keep my engines ready and whatever best I can do to run away or to attract the
Correct.
attention of the other vessel which is on a collision course with me.
Correct.
That all that has not been seen in this report. So, but this is therefore I'll not comment on this report. But yes, I can say that yes, what could have been done, because it says clearly that the rules of road or the additional lookouts were not posted neither by the container vessel Solong nor
Mhm.
by the tanker vessel Stena Immaculate.
Correct. Which is surprising. Would you find it surprising, or is that be normal?
See, I'll tell you from the practical aspect, I don't find it very surprising because, as I said earlier, I'm very sorry to say though, a younger generation is very much formed on upon the electronic aids to navigation. They are now, you see, there are a lot of factors. There are a lot of factors. One of the factor could be now every vessel is now provided with an internet, satellite internet facility.
Mhm.
I'm just guessing. It's one of my thing based upon what I've seen the youngster or young officers. They may be busy on their mobile phone on a WhatsApp or something, not bothered as to what's been happening, not carrying out due diligence as far as the anchor watch is concerned, because anchor watch has its own, set of rules that what is a safe anchor watch is, comprised of. And
Mhm.
as far as so long is concerned, probably the officer of watch may be busy with something else. Because one thing I fail to understand that first and foremost that you're coming well within the territorial sea of a coast, and once you come in the vicinity of a coastal waters,
Mhm.
the traffic density automatically is more.
Correct.
That includes your fishing traffic, your trawlers, your regular trading vessels. So there is more probability of collision or any kind of mishap to take place. Therefore, what happens that during the critical passage, the level of the bridge watch level is heightened or raised. Because when we talk about bridge watch level, like we say bridge watch level one, in which you have, let's say, the officer on watch and the AB. Level two doubled up with another additional officer. That is when you are in the coastal passage. Level three, that is two officers and the captain. They are there. That is when you're going into the critical water, passage where either you're approaching the port or leaving the port or coming into any kind of situation where additional, manpower is required, which I did not see in any of these reports. As far as Solong or this the container vessel is concerned, because she was underway. However, uh, as far as the tanker vessel Stena Immaculate is concerned, she being an oil chemical tanker, I don't know what type of cargo she was carrying, of course, but hazardous cargo and the dangerous cargoes also were being carried upon on container as well. So, coming to the point where I talk about the tanker vessel, uh, they should have had additional lookouts and would be sounding a horn. There's a separate, set of rule. We call it, Romeo. That is your fog signal, which should be sounded at an interval of 5 minutes interval between the fore and aft. You have a gong at the rear and the horn at the forward, where you can see. I'll show it to you on the mast. If you see my cursor here, you have
Yeah.
a horn
Right.
fitted here. Same thing is
Correct.
horn fitted here, and for the anchored vessel at the rear part, you have a gong. This
Mhm.
is to show or to depict the length of the vessel which is at anchor, which I don't think also was complied with by the anchored vessel as well. Not
So
to mention,
how
same thing
often
also was not there by in so long as well. Yes, please.
would they be using this? It goes every
No, no,
5 minutes.
this is, normally it is there at an interval of not more than 2 minutes. These are automatic horns. You just put them on automatic. One is on pneumatic, that is the foghorn at the forward or on the mast forward is automatic, and gong is electrical. which is again you put it on auto, it'll keep on working automatically at the designated interval.
So when do you switch this on, or it remains on all throughout?
No, no, you switch it on only during restricted visibility.
Okay.
So what I'm saying, the RV restricted visibility rules regulations were not complied with.
So in a visibility like this, that would have been required.
Yeah, that's an additional measure because that's where your due diligence and prudence towards the safety of navigation, as far as that is concerned, which I think was it was devoid of that, all those procedural things, and of course the complacency. What I understand, going through reports 3, 4 times, is that the so long because she was on fixed trading pattern, the complacency prevailed, and the tanker being a tanker thinking, okay, yeah, I'm a tanker, nothing will happen to me, the
Nothing to
ships
worry.
passing will
Yes.
pass clear of me, which did not happen. So no diligence and vigilance was being carried out either upon radar or visually by both the vessels.
Even on the radar, the cargo ship is, even if it's traveling at 16 nautical miles per hour, uh,
Hmm.
if you have a coverage of, let's say, 6 nautical miles, you still have about almost 15 to 20 minutes of warning time going on. Was there nothing done at that time, or
You
can they
see,
do something about it?
normal standard practice is that we have two radars, marine radars. One works on a 3 centimeter, one is on 10 centimeter. Now, the thing is that the 3 centimeter radar, it paints finely and even smaller targets can be seen. And what we do is that the 3 centimeter radar, we put it on normally 6 odd nautical miles range when we are coming to the coastal passage. The 10 centimeter radar is normally used for long range scanning. Though each of the marine radar has a range up to 96 nautical miles, 96 nautical miles can never be scanned because of the curvature of Earth.
Okay. Okay.
Maximum you can scan is where you can get or pick up the targets clearly, and also depends upon the efficiency of your magnetron, is up to, let's say, 24 odd nautical miles.
Mhm.
But a navigator who is exercising due diligence, he or she will be definitely using both the radars in tandem, one at about 6 odd nautical miles, or if required at 3 nautical miles if the subject to the traffic density. That is the 3 centimeter radar, and the 10 centimeter radar can be used on between 6 and 12 and keep on switching the ranges as and how it is required. And you can also superimpose both the radars on ECDIS as well. That is, ECDIS means on your chart as well. You can superimpose that. Yeah.
So given all
So,
this technology that is available, it's quite surprising that
no,
the time
yes,
like this.
you see, one is, you see, from our walk of life, one is that, you have AIS, that is automatic identification system,
Mhm.
which electronically acquires the targets
Correct.
and shows the vectors electronic.
Mhm.
But there can be errors in that because of some interference of any frequency. Therefore, it is prudent to use the manual or the vector targets instead of using electronic targets or the AIS targets when you talk about collision avoidance system.
Mm.
You have the provision, like the provision helps you. The AIS helps you for positive identification of the vessel. If I go back around 4 or decades ago when I joined CEs, that time we did not have this technology. If I have raised a vessel, let's say 6 odd nautical miles, I have to plot her on the radar and then, call her on the VHF, a vessel steaming a course of so and so, approximate speed so and so. This is so and so vessel on your port or starboard side, for him to acknowledge or answer. But with the AIS, what happens once the AIS is locked onto that vessel, you get her name, her call sign, her MMSI number, and lots of things. So there's a positive identification. Suppose if I'm underway and there's another vessel which is coming on a collision course with me, I straight away call her by her name, so he knows that it's me somebody is calling.
Mhm.
But 4 decades ago, if I'm calling, maybe there are two, three other vessels in in the same range. So
Right.
there was no positive identification. So AIS or electronic aids to navigation gives you, it does facilitate, but it is a tool. It all depends how do we use it to
Use
optimum. That is the main thing.
how much was the
Right.
damage in this?
Yeah. This is what I've shown you. The pictures, what I have is this is the tanker vessel, and this is prior to collision, and that's where somewhere this container vessel is approaching. The picture is not very clear though. And this is where after the bang, you see the port side of this.
Mhm.
This being a tanker vessel carrying hazardous or dangerous cargo, oil, chemical tanker. So when the container vessel had hit her on a port bow or port side, the impact of collision had been quite tremendous because taking the mass into velocity of the container vessel at 16 knots, and we can see a clear damage on the port side of the container vessel, and probably the fatality, the AB which we were talking about was standing somewhere here on the bow of the container vessel. So you can understand upon such a horrendous impact, what could have happened to him. His chances of survival would have been bare minimum or nothing. And other thing was that, which is there in the report, that after this impact, now you see the fire, the plume of fire. So after this, both the vessels had called for their lifeboat stations, basically lowering the lifeboat to abandon. But there is nothing thereafter in the report to specify what actually happened because, as we speak, it's an interim report and investigations are still underway.
Quite a huge loss this is.
Yeah.
Well, the tanker ship apparently had, like you said, aviation fuel.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't get your last, Captain Rohit.
I
I'll
think I
just
think the tanker
cut
had
off this. Yes.
aviation fuel in it.
Yeah,
Can
aviation fuel. Aviation fuel is same thing what you use it.
what we use, yeah.
In fact, I've loaded this aviation fuel many a times. For this prior to loading the aviation fuel, there's very stringent measures what we take when we do the carry out the preparation of the tank. That goes with the aviation fuel, even with the chemicals. But for aviation fuel, if the aviation fuel goes off spec, it is sold at the rate of kerosene oil
Uh,
because the aviation fuel is sold at a very high price. And for some reason, because what happens once we load, it's a good question you asked me. Once we load prior to loading the aviation fuel, the surveyors come, they check, they take the samples, and then the lab analysis, everything takes place, and they check the starting from specific gravity of the aviation fuel to all the specs, whether they comply with that or not. Because what happens once you start loading prior to that, prior to commencement of the loading, the initial inspection takes place, then the cargo is stopped. First, they take first foot sample, that is 1 foot of oil. Once it is loaded into the tank, then they take 3 foot sample. It's only after the lab analysis only the complete loading takes place. So the stringent measures are taken into account as far as the aviation fuel is also concerned.
So and then just to go back, let's say you were the captain of that cargo ship, so with a visibility of about zero point 0.2 nautical miles, what all precautions you would be taking, just for a layman's sake, for me to understand, what all
Okay.
precautions would you do?
First and foremost, yes, it all depends from the time you take over as a master. Uh, the safe manning document or the safe manning certificate, what I see, what I told you, if that should be complied upon, because if you don't have a compliance of the safe manning certificate, the vessel cannot sail, to be honest. Number two, if I think I may need additional manpower subject to the trading pattern of the vessel, I may insist and ask for from the company. Number three, of course, taking into consideration that the trading pattern has been same for X number of months or years. So basically, to avoid the complacency, especially in restricted visibility, the watches should have been doubled. Other point, what I was telling you, the compliance with the RV rules regulation as far as the sounding of the foghorns, keeping the main engines on standby because when she's proceeding, so long is proceeding at 16 knots. That means some main engines are not standby because once you keep the main engines on standby, what happens? We have like starting from the telegraph point of view, like how you give your throttle as stop, dead slow ahead, and full ahead. Now, full ahead, when you say full ahead, not the sea speed, full ahead is a maneuvering RPM. What happens that you may or you can proceed to full ahead, but at any point in time, you can pull your throttle back or reduce the speed. That is up to full maneuvering ahead. That's what I'm talking about. Beyond full maneuvering ahead, you come to sea speed. So what happens that when you go to the full sea speed, it depends upon RPM. If I, take an example, I don't know what was our maximum RPM so long when she was going. Let's say my full maneuvering RPM is 95. Now, if I have to go to 120 RPM, I will have to tell my chief engineer, okay, let's proceed to sea speed. So he will gradually, rev the engine up to 115 or 120, whatever RPM I have asked for, subject to the speed, subject to the weather. For vessel to come down from 115 or 120 sea speed to 95, which is my full maneuvering, would take at least 30 to 45 minutes.
Wow.
Because starting additional generators and what happens that once you put your speed to full sea speed, your exhaust blowers they cut off. But if you immediately put from 120 to 95, the engine may respond. But at the same time, your exhaust blowers they cut in, and the generator, because we have normally three marine generators. So what happens during full sea speed? Once we are giving sea speed, because exhaust blowers they cut off after 95 RPM, as the example I gave you. So the load on the generator reduces. So what they do, they cut off second generator. Normally in maneuvering, two generators are used, subject to load. But if there is some cargo operation going on, they may use third generator also. But this I'm talking about from the maneuvering point of view. So from 120, if I have to come to 95, if I pull the throttle back, okay, the engine may respond, but there is not sufficient load which the generator cannot take. I will land up with a blackout and engine kaput. So you have to give at least from all practical aspects, at least 35, 40 minutes to the chief engineer. That is from the time, because if it is hours of darkness, night, from the time he has reached engine room, from that time you have to allow 35, 40 minutes for him to start the generator, do the preparations. So in this case, I'm sure that the vessel Solong was not proceeding at safe speed because once you're at safe speed, you have UMS class of ships also unmanned class ships where everything works automatically. But when you have to man, then the engineers they go down. Now I don't know what class of vessel was this, but mostly nowadays most of the ships are UMS class. So, in all fairness, what I understand that the vessel was not proceeding at safe speed or at maneuvering speed. So she had no other way to, stop the ship. And the same thing, which is very surprising, is that in restricted visibility, how come they are going at 16 knots and then they are coming closer to the coast as what we had seen in the report that notch adjustment was being carried out to adjust the courses.
So this is quite important in this. Why would they not?
I'm sorry, what is that?
I think this is quite important. Why were they not at speed? They should have.
Yeah, it should have been. This is something, I can only talk about the reasons why she should have been on the maneuvering RPM, but why she was not, that I cannot say until such time it's specified in the report.
And also the usage of your anti-collision devices. How they
No,
could.
no, Captain Rohit, anti-collision devices are always on here. Radars are always on. Marine radars are always on. If suppose you have a problem with one radar, you cannot sail the ship.
Okay.
As
So
I said, we have two radars, two marine radars, but
yes, so
if one is not
two
working, you
radars.
cannot sail the ship unless you get flag state exemption.
So some kind of warning and alert must have come up much in
It was
advance.
there, yeah. You have ARPA. You have ARPA. ARPA which gives you early warning, automatic radar plotting aids. They'll give you a warning. But if the warnings, what happens many a times, the officer says, yeah, this tung tung or this alarm is coming to my so many times. So basically mute it.
Okay, okay.
And then other thing, chalo, audio visual is there everywhere. There is no no reason for them to mute it, but then that means were they not physically monitoring the
Mm.
traffic in the coastal waters? This is something very surprising.
So now let's look at the aircraft that I mean the ship that is anchored. What all precautions would you take if you were the captain?
See, first and foremost, that I starting from the basics. I would, keep my warning signals on. That is audio signals. What I spoke to you, audio signals, and visual. Normally, what happens that at night or even in restrictive visibility, you switch on all your deck lights. So you have audio visual both.
Mhm.
Number two, additional lookout shall be placed on the bridge and the bridge wings, or as deemed necessary by the master. Number three, monitoring of the radar of the traffic passing in the closest proximity of your vessel. Number four, as I said, you put a guard zone that, okay, 6 nautical miles or 8 nautical miles, you have a provision where you can put a guard zone 6 or 8 nautical miles subject to your size of the vessel and your maneuvering characteristics, that how much time you may take to keep your engines ready, etc., and also subject to the speed of the approaching vessel. Put the guard zone on. If you find there's a vessel which is coming 8 nautical miles within your, outer periphery of your ring, the alarm will start beeping, and then you monitor that, okay, where she's heading. If she's passing clear of you, uh, tangentially in that 8 nautical mile circle, fair enough.
Just fine. Yeah.
But if you find that she's constantly approaching you, you have name of the vessel. As per the AIS, what I spoke, you
Yeah.
raise her, call her up, saying, okay, stay clear. I'm an anchored vessel. Please keep clear of me. Subjectively, the duty officer, if he finds he's coming very close, let's say from 8 to 6 nautical miles, and he's still at the same speed and on a collision course, call the master, inform the engines to keep the engine steady, ready, call the anchor party to stand by to pick up the anchor in case the need be, and that's all you can do, timely. And of course, VTIs, they do warn. This is also not mentioned here in this report whether VTIs did they admonish them or not. But VTIs do warn, but it is not. They can they. It is like you cannot accuse VTIs. Oh, you did not call us. The VTIs will say, "What the heck were you doing on the bridge here? Were you not keeping a safe bridge watch?" So you cannot blame this on VTIs because VTIs may be monitoring another 50 odd or another 100 odd vessels. They are not monitoring one particular ship. So the blame cannot go to the VTIs. It's only for the vessel, the master and vessel and the master both.
So even with all this technology available, it looks like that we have to talk about the human factors, the human angle involved in this, without blaming anybody. We don't even know
Human
exactly.
angle, uh, Captain Rohit, human angle, I can say it's a complacency.
Mhm.
One vessel, because she was on fixed trading pattern, he said, "Yeah, I've been through this passage 100 number of times, so no problem. I can go. Even in restricted visibility, I've been through 100 number of times. Nothing happened, so nothing will happen this time also." And the vessel which was anchored was also complacent, saying, "Yeah, I'm anchored. The other vessels will pass clear of me." So probably this is one of the thing I'm talking about out of the box. Maybe internet is there very good on this thing. He's talking to some of his near and dear, or maybe busy on WhatsApp or something else, or involved in some other extra co-curricular activity besides keeping a safe bridge watch.
Shortage of staff.
Shortage of staff can also be there because in one of the ship, the master was hopping up and down, and then one ship, the second mate was keeping 12-hourly watch. I do not know exactly what does that mean because 12 hour is quite a bit. To keep 12-hour watch at a stretch on the
It's not
bridge
not
is
humanly
too
possible.
much. It's not humanly possible because you get mentally exhausted. Yeah, if you're actually doing the job, you get mentally very much exhausted. So human element is there, but then human element, if suppose you, let's say all the due diligence were exercised, that let's say the officer of Stena Immaculate was diligently monitoring the movement of the vessels in the vicinity, and if at that point in time he's keeping 12 hours of watch, I can understand that human factor is there because he is mentally exhausted or something or the other. But still, it does not exonerate him as far as the safety of navigation is concerned.
Of
But
course, it does.
in this particular case, that no warning shots were given.
That's a concern. Yeah, because this 12 hours of watch, it's not humanly possible to be
It is
monitoring
not.
the situation.
Maximum we do it 6 on 6 off or 6 hours on and 6 hours off, and this is to comply with the work rest hours as per the requirements.
Yeah, because when you look at performance, human performance actually drops.
It
It's
does, it
that
does, it does.
that level of you cannot monitor at the same rate at which you can probably for maybe for 2 hours or 3 hours. Beyond that, you need extra support or a break, rest, and then probably come back. 12 hours in one stretch, not the best idea.
You see, there is another thing from where you know uh, where you guys, I think, Touchwood, are on better wicket compared to us because if you put an officer for 6 hourly watch, 6 on 6 off, a normal contract or the tenure tour of duties vary between 4 to 6 months for junior officers. For senior officers, around 4 odd months, as per the
Mhm.
standard practice. If a person who is doing sixes, be it in the cargo control or cargo control room and the bridge, he cannot function well. Maybe initially when he has joined, his graph has peaked up to maximum. After that, it'll start dipping down. So
Absolutely.
that cannot be ignored. And again, I'm trying to reaffirm that this particular thing in this case, it is not specified that for how long the officers had been keeping 6 hourly or 12 hourly watch. Then of course I can understand the mental exhaustion is there.
Yeah.
And then there is no redundancy, there is no extra lookout or extra eye to watch for you, which also matters. Because if there is an extra lookout, which was not there it was not evident in both the vessels
Right. It's not
that
mentioned.
yeah, no, it was mentioned extra lookouts were not posted, something of that sort was there.
Uh,
So that means you don't have anybody to prompt you, to warn you that, okay, this is what it is, do something. So I thought of discussing with you this particular case, and
It's quite an interesting
which
one. We can't reach
recently
any
happened.
conclusion in this because we still don't have the full report.
Yeah, like it's not good to give a verdict because we are not the person at site. We are discussing one to one,
So,
and we are trying to take each other's opinion. And of course, with your questionnaire, it helps me, gives me food for thought that, okay, if this was the case, what could have been there, at the back of the across the fence. So yes, it gives me a different perspective also to talk about it when when you're asked few questions. But what actually had happened, that is something we cannot home on to it.
yes, absolutely. And it would be wrong to do that till you have the final report.
Yes, yes, yes. But one thing is there: spare the rod, spoil the child. Captain Rohit, anything else you'd like to talk about, or we conclude this session?
Yes, so quite a few learnings for us, for me as well, especially with all the technology available and probably not used appropriately or efficiently, and also the rest period maybe must have been a concern. Uh,
Yes, work rest hours, of course, the human brain functions quite optimistically and at optimum level once he or she is rested well. You function well. But a mentally, physically exhausted person, you cannot extract much out of him or her.
yes, that's something that both our professions, the limitations of the brain is not, well, it's understood. There's a lot of studies available, but it's not utilized appropriately because we are all pushed to, to great extent to get a lot of work hours out of us. But it's not physically possible beyond a certain point to extract efficient work out of the human brain. It has to get that rest and then come back to full performance. That's something that has to be understood, I think, as questions in both our fields. Another thing that you talked about is complacency, and that's the best or the easiest method for the brain to save energy. We become complacent. It's not because it's, of course, our seniors would blame it on, you have poor discipline. Of course, it's got to do with discipline as well, but also it's a way of saving energy by the brain. So things that we do again and again, we stop thinking about it. We just keep repeating it. That's when we had to be alert. That's called complacency.
You
When
see,
the
the
brain says,
complacency, the element of complacency must have incurred in both the vessels. In this particular case, as we talk about, of course, there are a lot of other examples which we have seen in our lives, both the sides. Is that because one is the vessel, one vessel is trading into the same pattern through and through for X number of times, and at this point in time, the visibility in this area, North England and in this part of the world is quite common. So that complacency had been there that, okay, I've been through this passage umpteen number of times and it's at the back of my hand. I can, vouch for it. And nothing had happened to me last time. Also, last time it was zero visibility. Now it's 0.25 to 2 nautical
I
miles.
can
If
do
nothing
that.
happened that time, what will happen to me this time? So these kind of foolish things come to
Assumptions.
you, because of the complacency.
So
ठीक
good
है?
learning. Thank you so much for covering it
हाँ,
so
Captain Rohit.
nicely. Thank you. Great.
Likewise. Thank you,
Have a
sir.
nice day.
Giant, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.